In a world where billionaires seem to stand above the law, what happens when a 22-year-old black waitress decides that one of them has crossed the line? This isn't a fairy tale. This is the story of Maya Lawson, a young woman fueled by pride and grit, who dared to confront a giant right in the heart of crowded Manhattan at a little diner called the Gilded Spoon. The Gilded Spoon isn't just any eatery. It's a slice of history, a steadfast refuge amid Manhattan's dizzying pace of change. The black and white checkered floor is worn smooth by millions of footsteps. The red leather booths are cracked and faded, like the smiles of old friends. And everywhere you breathe in the rich aroma of strong coffee, the sizzle of smoky bacon, and the irresistible scent of Mrs. Maria's legendary apple pie. This is where true New Yorkers come to taste a bit of home in a city that never slows down. For Maya Lawson, the Gilded Spoon means even more. At 22, her life is a tightrope stretched between dreams and duty. By day, she glides from table to table with such grace that few notice how exhausted she really is. By night, she transforms into a passionate architecture student at the prestigious Cooper Union, pouring every ounce of energy into designing the next skyline-defining tower, one that might carry a message of social equity among its steel and glass. But Maya's road is anything but easy. She carries on her shoulders the care of her 12-year-old brother Jaden, who suffers from a rare autoimmune disorder. Medical bills pile up like an unscalable mountain, making every hard-earned dollar feel like a precious lifeline. Rent, tuition, and, above all, the expensive medications Jaden can't live without. To Maya, the Gilded Spoon is her sanctuary, a peaceful harbor amid life's storms. Mrs. Maria, with her kind, knowing eyes, is the mother Maya never had. She senses exactly when Maya needs a moment's rest, when she's pushing herself too hard, and she never fails to offer a warm smile of encouragement. That morning began like any other. Regulars chatted in low, familiar tones. The bell above the door tinkled in rhythm with clinking forks and murmured conversation, a soft soundtrack to everyday life. Maya moved among the tables, remembering who liked their coffee black, who couldn't stand onions, who preferred to sit by the window and watch the hustle of Manhattan. Suddenly, the door's bell rang out differently, sharp and harsh, as if the door itself sneered in contempt. The cozy atmosphere shattered. This wasn't the friendly chime of a welcoming guest, nor the cheerful jingle of a first-time visitor discovering New York. It was the herald of someone entering with a cold, hostile energy. In strode Hunter Thorne, a 27-year-old heir to the Thorne global empire. Tall, handsome in a stern sort of way, he swept his gaze across the room like he was appraising property. To him, everyone here was an obstacle to his entitlement, not a human being. Trailing behind were two followers, Logan and Tyler, clumsily mimicking Hunter's aloof arrogance in their designer labels. They looked like they were auditioning for a role in Hunter's world, the world of powerful, wealthy white privilege. Hunter's eyes locked onto the diner's finest table, where an elderly couple was celebrating their wedding anniversary. Pointing with thinly veiled disdain, he barked, "Move them. I want that table now." The entire diner froze under an instant hush. Maya stepped forward, her voice measured and professional. "I'm sorry, sir, but they arrived first and are in the middle of their meal. We have other seating available if you don't mind waiting." For the first time, Hunter looked at Maya, his gaze dripping with contempt. He surveyed her worn shoes, her natural curls, her brown skin, then sneered, "Do you not understand English? Or is it too hard for someone like you? People like you don't get to argue with me. Do as I say." Heat surged in Maya's chest. She was all too familiar with hostile stares and insults because of her skin color. But here, In front of Mrs. Maria and the customers she'd come to cherish, she refused to be humiliated any longer. She squared her shoulders, met Hunter's eyes, and spoke with calm clarity. "Sir, I understand exactly what you're saying. And I'm answering you just as clearly. We don't accommodate that kind of demand here. If you can't wait, you're free to leave." Hunter froze, shock and fury crossing his face. No one, least of all a young black waitress, had ever dared to say no to him before. The diner fell silent as every eye fixed on Maya and Hunter. That moment marked the beginning of a chain of events that would change Maya Lawson's life forever. The tense moment stretched out, each second dragging on like an eternity. Maya remained perfectly upright, her gaze unwavering and strong as she faced Hunter head-on, refusing to flinch under the invisible pressure from this powerful man. The entire diner seemed to hold its breath, watching every heartbeat of this unexpected showdown. The warm, familiar atmosphere had turned icy and heavy, as though the smallest spark might ignite an all-out explosion. Hunter Thorne still couldn't believe that a black waitress at this modest little eatery dared to openly challenge and refuse his demand. His handsome, arrogant face flushed crimson with anger, his cold eyes burning with contempt. He let a crooked smile creep across his lips, but it wasn't friendly, it was cruel mockery, designed to wound Maya as deeply as possible. "You really don't get it, do you?" Hunter said in a low, cold voice, laced with sarcasm. "Or maybe you're just not smart enough to understand that the customer is always right. Perhaps you're used to being in a place where nobody ever taught you about courtesy or hospitality." His words were like a knife, deliberately gouging at Maya's pride and self-worth. Hunter clearly intended to humiliate her in front of everyone. He believed his status and skin color gave him the right to trample her. To him, everything had a price, and if necessary, he'd use his money to break anyone who dared stand up to him. Maya said nothing, holding back the anger simmering inside. She knew she couldn't lose her cool, especially not when Hunter was baiting her into making a mistake. Drawing a steady breath, she kept her voice gentle but resolute. "Sir," she said, "as I've already stated, every customer here is treated equally. No one has the right to demand someone else leave just because they want their seat. Please respect that basic rule." Hunter's brow furrowed, his expression growing far more menacing than before. No one had ever refused him twice. His icy blue eyes seemed to burn into Maya on the spot. His hand trembled with rage as he ground his teeth and spoke in a low, threatening tone. "You sure are stubborn, aren't you? Fine. Let's see how long you can hold out. I'll show you what happens when you defy me." With that, he plunged his hand into the pocket of his expensive vest and pulled out a thick stack of fresh green bills, the symbol of the power he believed could bend anyone to his will. He selected a few notes, held them aloft in slow, arrogant display, and then flung them onto the worn tile floor at Maya's feet, as though they were worthless scraps. "Is this what you want?" Hunter taunted. "Bend down and pick them up. I'm sure that's the only thing someone like you can understand." A murmur rippled through the diner, but almost immediately the sound died away. Everyone was stunned by the cruelty and shamelessness of Hunter's actions. Some guests shook their heads in sympathetic disbelief. Others lowered their gazes, ashamed of the man before them. Mrs. Maria, the owner, looked more tense than Maya had ever seen her, ready to intervene, until Maya's steady, confident stare told her to let her handle it. Maya stood for a moment longer, looking down at the bills scattered across the time-worn tiles. To her, this was more than a personal insult. It was a blatant act of racial contempt, a blatant discrimination meant to reduce her worth to nothing. She knew that if she bent down to pick up those bills, she'd lose her self-respect and forfeit the regard of everyone in the diner. Finally, she lifted her eyes to Hunter's and spoke clearly, her voice echoing through the hush. "Mr. Thorne, some things can't be bought, especially self-respect and the basic respect owed to another human being. If you can't grasp that simple truth, then you're in the wrong place." Hunter froze, clearly unprepared for such resolute words from this young black woman he had always seen as inferior. Her voice wasn't loud, but every word was a razor-sharp blow to his wounded pride. Silence held the diner captive, as all eyes remained fixed on the two of them. The money on the floor stood as Hunter's declaration of absolute power, but Maya's sharp reply was a clear proclamation that dignity and human worth can neither be bought nor trampled by anyone. Hunter's hand clenched into a fist, his eyes flashing with spite and fury. He was not a man accustomed to defeat, especially not at the hands of someone he'd always assumed was beneath him. He stared at Maya with a burning resentment, clearly plotting his next move to crush this small but unbreakable woman. The air felt thick and foreboding, signaling a storm was about to break. And Maya knew, deep in her heart, that she had entered a battle from which there would be no easy retreat. Yet she never once regretted standing up for her dignity and equality, no matter the price she might pay. The air in the diner had grown so tense it felt hard to breathe. Every patron's eyes were locked on Maya and Hunter, waiting to see who would back down first. Maya stood her ground, chin slightly raised, her eyes shining with unbreakable resolve. Across from her, Hunter Thorne had never felt such profound humiliation in all his life of privilege and power. Anger shook Hunter's frame, the pale blue of his eyes gleaming with dark, savage light. He was used to getting everything he wanted with ease, to others bowing before his status and wealth. Yet now, in front of dozens of witnesses, his power felt meaningless, utterly useless against this small, determined woman. "Who do you think you are?" Hunter spat, his voice trembling with hatred. He clenched his jaw so hard it shook, barely able to keep from shouting, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "You think your cheap moral sermon can teach me a lesson? Let me tell you something. I can make you regret your stupidity." Maya's gaze never wavered. She refused to show him even a flicker of fear or weakness. "I'm simply doing my job," she replied, softly but firmly. "And you're disturbing my customers and insulting me. I suggest you leave, right now." Hunter laughed. A cruel, mocking sound that barely hid the fire burning inside him. "You have the nerve to kick me out?" he snarled. "I'll show you what happens when you defy me." With a sudden burst of violence, Hunter lunged at Maya. His strong hand snatched her wrist, twisting it with brute force. Maya gasped as pain shot up her arm, but she stayed calm. In that split second, memories of protecting her brother Jaden from danger surged through her, the countless times she'd fought back against cruelty aimed at them because of their skin. Her instincts kicked in. Quick and precise, Maya twisted her wrist free from Hunter's grip while driving her other hand into his chest. Caught off guard by her swift, decisive reaction, Hunter staggered backward. His expensive leather shoes slipped on the glossy floor, and in one sharp motion he crashed to the ground. The thud echoed through the stunned silence of the diner. All eyes were on Hunter, the man who, moments ago, had wielded power like a weapon, now sprawled on the floor in utter shock and shame. He looked up, face flushed not just from the fall but from a deeper wound to his pride. Never before had he been so humiliated, especially by a young black waitress he'd always assumed he could control. Maya stood over him, breathing hard, heart pounding with adrenaline. Yet her expression remained cool and resolute. no hint of fear or weakness for Hunter to savor. Slowly, Hunter rose to his feet, dusting off his designer vest in a clumsy bid to reclaim dignity. His eyes burned with hatred, resentment, and wounded pride. Pointing at Maya, his voice dropped to a cold, deadly whisper. "You will regret today. I swear it. I will destroy your life so thoroughly you'll wish you were never born. That's my promise. Hunter Thorne's promise." With that, he spun on his heel and strode for the door, Logan and Tyler trailing behind him, embarrassed and avoiding every gaze. The bell above the door clanged harshly as it slammed shut, leaving a heavy silence hanging over the diner. Maya exhaled, instinctively rubbing her aching wrist, but she forced herself to stand tall. Mrs. Maria hurried over and wrapped her arms around her, voice shaky with worry and pride. "You did the right thing, Maya. I'm so proud of you." One by one, the customers recovered. A few began to clap softly, their eyes full of admiration and solidarity. Maya looked around, her heart heavy with Hunter's vicious threat, but deep inside she knew she had defended not just herself, but the dignity of everyone who's ever been belittled and discriminated against. Yet Maya also understood this was only the beginning of a much longer fight, one she could not afford to back down from, no matter how dangerous and relentless her opponent might be. The bell above the door fell silent behind Hunter like the period at the end of a turbulent chapter. But Maya knew her story was only just beginning. In those first moments, she could still hear her heart pounding in her chest, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Maria, the diner's owner, gently placed a hand on Maya's trembling shoulder and whispered reassuringly, "You're okay now, Maya. You did the right thing." Yet, deep inside, Maya understood that the right thing often comes at a steep price, especially when your adversary is Hunter Thorne, a man whose wealth and influence could dismantle her humble life with a single phone call. As her adrenaline subsided, a creeping fear began to settle in her mind, bringing the darkest of thoughts. Maya lowered her gaze to her wrist, rimmed red and throbbing from Hunter's brutal grip. That bruise was more than a mark on her skin. It was a stark reminder that he would not easily let her go. She knew exactly what kind of man he was, raised to have every whim immediately satisfied, accustomed to treating people like pawns in his game. A young black waitress defying him didn't just wound his pride, it challenged the very power he cherished. Heavy-hearted, Maya moved slowly into the small back room, each step feeling weighed down by stones. She sank into a worn wooden chair as if all her strength had drained away. In the room's gloomy stillness, her fear surged like relentless waves. She wondered, was her brave stand worth the cost? Had she gambled away her future and Jaden's? Just thinking of Jaden made her chest tighten. Her 12-year-old brother, fragile and innocent-eyed, depended on her for everything, emotionally and financially. His rare autoimmune illness was a daily battle of excruciating pain and costly treatments. Maya knew that the Thorne family's power could cut off his life-saving support in an instant. A letter from their top. Tier lawyers, a phone call to her university, even a demand that she be fired. It would be so simple for them to obliterate both their lives. Her throat constricted and tears pricked her eyes, but she forced herself to take a deep breath and cling to the hope that things would turn out all right. Still, a small, doubtful voice whispered in her mind. She had no idea what would happen next, and that terrified her more than anything. The wall clock ticked steadily, a reminder that time marched on and an uncertain future lay ahead. Maria entered quietly and set a steaming cup of tea on the table in front of Maya. Her eyes were full of concern as she asked gently, "Are you okay, Maya?" Maya managed a grateful smile, though her eyes still betrayed her worry. "I'm fine, Maria. I'm just anxious about what's coming." Maria sighed and sat beside her, full of sympathy and sorrow. "I know, but remember, you did the right thing. Don't blame yourself for that." Maya nodded, but her heart remained heavy. She knew that no matter how much Maria and the customers supported her, none of them could shield her from the full force of Hunter Thorne's wrath. People like him always find a way to crush lives like hers in the blink of an eye. That day, time seemed to crawl with an almost sinister slowness. Maya tried to return to her duties, but every ring of the doorbell made her startle, fear gnawing at her that it might be a lawyer's summons, or some agent of Hunter's. Anxiety clung to every movement and every glance she cast toward the entrance. When her shift finally ended, the walk home to the small apartment where Jaden waited felt 10 miles long. Opening the door, she was greeted by her brother's delicate but hopeful smile. As always, he was thrilled to see her come home safely. Yet today, that sweet grin felt like a knife twisting in her heart, reminding her of everything she stood to lose if Hunter made good on his threat. Maya swept Jaden into her arms, fighting back tears as she whispered, "I will always protect you." It was a promise both to him and to herself. But in her chest, a raging storm was gathering, a fearsome portent that today was only the beginning of grueling trials ahead, challenges that could push their lives to the very brink, where every dream and hope might vanish in an instant. Dawn the next morning felt painfully slow in coming, but for Maya, the night before had never really ended. She'd lain awake, mind racing with the invisible fear that could strike at any moment. The clock ticked steadily on the wall, each tick echoing like her own heartbeat and reminding her of the fragile future ahead. Maya knew all too well that Hunter Thorne's rage and threats wouldn't simply vanish overnight. When she stepped back into the Gilded Spoon that morning, it seemed as though even the air was holding its breath, waiting for something terrible to happen. Regular customers were in their usual seats, but their eyes on Maya were filled with concern and worry. Perhaps they sensed the invisible pressure suffocating the little diner. Maria offered her a shaky smile of encouragement, but the worry in her eyes spoke volumes. Everyone knew the Thornes didn't forgive insults lightly, especially not when the offense came from a nameless black waitress. Maya set the tables as calmly as she could, determined to get through the difficult day. But less than an hour later, the doorbell rang again, this time with a weight and authority unlike anything before. Maya's heart leapt into her throat as she looked up and froze at the sight of the man who had just entered. Tall and imposing, his salt and pepper hair neatly groomed, wearing a sharp black suit and deep blue tie that radiated power. He belonged to another world entirely. It was none other than Edward Thorne, Hunter's formidable father, the business titan whose name was whispered in boardrooms across America, founder of Thorne Global. His empire spanned countless Manhattan skyscrapers and multi-billion-dollar developments. A single phone call or nod from him could alter the destinies of thousands. Edward stood at the threshold, his steely blue eyes surveying the diner with cold, impassive authority, an authority so potent it made everyone in the room shiver. An oppressive hush fell over the place. Every patron unconsciously held their breath, both afraid and fascinated. Even Maria, usually the picture of calm, tensed visibly as Edward strode toward Maya. Maya remained rooted in place, her shaking hands hidden within the crisp white apron at her waist. Her eyes widened, unwilling to accept the terrifying reality unfolding before her. Her worst fears had come true. Standing before her was not just Hunter, who'd brazenly insulted her, but his father, the man whose power could crush her in an instant. Edward stopped before Maya, his face still icy, his voice low and commanding, meant for her ears alone. "Maya Lawson?" "Yes, sir," Maya managed, striving for calm even as her insides churned. She met his gaze, cold and impenetrable as slabs of ice, knowing this man could decide her fate in a single moment. "I'm Edward Thorne," he said evenly, betraying no emotion. "I imagine you know why I'm here today." "Sir, Maya began, but Edward raised a hand to silence her. His eyes swept the room, ensuring no stray ears were listening in. "May we speak in private?" he asked, his tone still deceptively calm but heavy with gravity. Maya glanced at Maria, whose worried nod quietly bolstered her courage. Taking a deep breath, Maya answered steadily, "Yes, sir, we can go to the back room." Edward gave a slight nod and followed her toward the small room behind the kitchen counter. As they passed stunned patrons, Maya felt every step on that invisible tightrope, the abyss yawning just beneath her feet. Once the door clicked shut behind them, Maya turned to face Edward, her heart pounding louder than ever. The dim light of the room only heightened the eeriness of his presence. He stood silent for several moments, his sharp gaze seeming to dissect her very soul. At last, he spoke in that same low, authoritative voice. "I won't beat around the bush. I'm here today to get to the bottom of what happened yesterday between you and Hunter. But before I say anything, I want to hear it directly from you, Maya. I want you to tell me the whole story, every detail." His eyes never left hers, as if weighing each word she was about to utter. Maya understood in that suffocating instant that this was only the beginning of a new, fierce storm, one she might not weather alone. Maya swallowed hard, her heart still racing as she faced Edward Thorne, the man who ranked among the most powerful in America, capable of flipping her entire life upside down with a single nod. His sharp gaze studied her intently, as though measuring every tiny reaction. Yet, to her surprise, there was no anger or hostility in his eyes. Instead, Edward appeared remarkably calm, as if he were trying to understand the situation rather than condemn her. Taking a steadying breath, Maya forced herself to recount every detail. Hunter's arrogant, racist tirades, the harsh insults, the moment he seized her wrist, and how she had instinctively fought back to protect herself. She spoke honestly, withholding nothing, because she knew that lies would only make matters worse. Edward listened closely to every word, his brow furrowing as Maya described Hunter's cruelty. When she finished, he remained silent for a long moment, the cramped back room seeming to compress around them. Finally, he sighed and looked up at her, his expression folding into a mix of deep disappointment and something that might have been shame. "You know, Maya," Edward began, his voice tinged with a sorrow she hadn't heard when he first entered the diner. "When I set out this morning, I braced myself for an unpleasant truth about my son. And, as I suspected, your story confirmed my deepest fears." Maya's eyes widened in surprise. She had steeled herself for reproach or threats, but Edward's words were nothing she'd imagined. He dipped his head, speaking with unexpected gravity. "I'm not here to defend Hunter or blame you, Maya. In fact, I owe you an apology. You endured things no one should ever face, especially at the hands of my own son." Maya stared at him, stunned into silence. This wasn't what she'd expected from such a formidable figure. Edward's sincerity and composure left her both relieved and bewildered. He met her gaze, earnestness shining in his icy blue eyes. "I've spent my life building Thorne Global, crafting status and prestige for my family. But I've neglected the one responsibility that truly mattered: raising a decent, responsible son. Hunter is my greatest failure, and I don't know if I have enough time left to fix it." He paused, the remorse etched on his face making Maya's heart ache with unexpected compassion. Then he continued, speaking more softly, yet still carrying that weight of regret. "Hunter grew up with everything handed to him, never having to face real hardship. He's used to people bowing to his power, so he never learned the value of respect or dignity. But yesterday, for the first time in his life, he met someone who wasn't intimidated by his money or status. That someone was you." Edward's eyes reflected genuine admiration now, and Maya felt a flash of confusion mixed with faint warmth. "You are the only person I've ever known to stand up to Hunter without fear. You taught him a valuable lesson that I never had the chance to teach him. And whether he realizes it yet or not, I want to thank you." Maya was at a loss for words. All her doubts and fears dissolved in the face of Edward's unexpected candor. Still, a part of her wondered, was this gesture really as sincere as it seemed? Noticing her hesitation, Edward offered a rare, gentle smile, an expression she would never have imagined on his stern face. "I understand you may question my motives, but I didn't come here to threaten or punish you. I came with an offer I believe could mean far more for your future." He reached into his suit pocket and drew out a small envelope, placing it on the table before her. Maya's pulse quickened. Not with fear this time, but curiosity. "Inside is my formal invitation," Edward explained, his eyes steady but kind. "Thorne Global is embarking on the largest architectural project we've ever undertaken, right in the heart of New York City. I'd like to invite you to tour the site with me. I know you're studying architecture at Cooper Union, and I believe this will be a rare opportunity to see something truly remarkable, one that I hope will reshape this city forever." Maya's eyes widened further. An invitation from Edward Thorne to a groundbreaking project, something she'd never dared dream possible. Edward straightened his vest and extended his hand politely across the table. "You don't have to give me an answer now. Take your time, Maya, but I sincerely hope you'll accept. It's the most genuine thank you I can offer, and perhaps the greatest opportunity you'll ever have." Maya looked at his outstretched hand, her heart pounding. It all felt surreal, yet one thing was clear. This invitation could change the course of her life, even if she didn't yet know where it might lead. The sleek black helicopter set down gently on the private helipad atop Thorne Global's tallest skyscraper. Maya stepped out into the cold, high-altitude breeze that whipped her hair around her face. Yet, it wasn't only the wind that made her tremble. Just yesterday, she'd been serving tables in a tiny diner, wrestling with everyday worries. Today, she stood at the pinnacle of a landmark vision for the future, beside one of the most powerful men in America. Edward emerged from the chopper with his customary calm authority. He gestured for Maya to follow him, and together they crossed into the rooftop exhibition space. The moment Maya entered, she was overwhelmed by gleaming architectural renderings, striking 3D models, and detailed designs never before revealed to the public. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a breathtaking panorama of Manhattan's glittering skyline, each tower sparkling like a giant gemstone in the morning sun. Standing beside her, Edward's eyes shone with pride as he regarded the plans unfolding around them. Then, after a few seconds, he turned to Maya, his voice measured but weighty. "Maya, you're standing before the most important project of my life. This is what I've spent decades building, not just structures of steel and glass, but the legacy I intend to leave behind. And as you know, the future always begins in the present." Maya nodded, drinking in every word, though her heart still raced with anxiety about why he'd brought her here. Edward continued, speaking deliberately. "I've learned a great deal about you, Maya. Not only what happened with Hunter, but also the resilience, intelligence, and dignity you've shown. I know you're studying at Cooper Union, and I know the hardships you and Jaden face, especially regarding his health." Maya's eyes widened at the mention of Jaden, her brother. Edward's gaze remained earnest. "I'll be direct. I want to help you, Maya. I want to cover the remainder of your tuition at Cooper Union, and not only that, I want to ensure Jaden receives the best medical care available, without ever worrying about the cost again." Maya was too stunned to speak. Years of financial strain and medical anxiety now suddenly hung in the balance by Edward Thorne's single promise. She looked at him, her eyes filled with equal parts hope and suspicion. "Why are you doing this? I can't believe this help comes without strings attached." Edward offered a small, even unsettling smile, his eyes growing steely with resolve, as he closed the distance between them and lowered his voice. "As you guessed, Maya, there is a condition. One I know you may find hard to accept, but I must insist." Her heart clenched. She steeled herself, hands balled into fists to keep from trembling. "What is this condition?" Edward met her gaze unflinchingly. "I want you to work for Thorne Global, directly under Hunter. I realize it's an outrageous request, especially after what he did to you, but the truth is, Hunter is hurtling down the wrong path, and I can't stop him on my own any longer." He paused, pain flickering across his features, the first crack in his cool exterior. "I need you, Maya. I need you to be a moral compass, a living example of dignity and self-respect, things Hunter has never truly understood. I want him to face you every day, to learn respect and humility from the very person he once scorned. This is my last chance to save my son from destroying himself." Maya felt as though she'd been punched in the gut. Hurt, anger, and betrayal roiled through her. How could Edward ask her to become a tool for Hunter's reform, after all he'd done to her? Tears of outrage glistened in her eyes as she found her voice. "Mr. Thorne, do you really think forcing me to work under Hunter, to face the man who insulted and demeaned me daily, is the way to teach him a lesson? Do you understand how deeply humiliating and painful this request is?" Edward bowed his head, remorse etched in every line of his face, yet his tone remained steely and calm. "I understand, Maya, and I know this is an unreasonable demand. But look beyond the present hurt. This isn't just about helping Hunter. It's about your future and Jaden's future. It's an opportunity to free yourselves from worries about medical bills and tuition so you can truly build the life you deserve." Maya stared at him, torn apart inside. This might be the single opportunity she'd ever get. But could she endure the humiliation of daily encounters with the man who'd almost broken her? Edward took a step back, giving her space to breathe. His voice softened to its lowest register. "You don't have to decide now, Maya, but remember, your choice today will change your life forever. And Hunter's too. I only hope you can look past the wounds of the moment and make the decision that feels right in your heart." Maya stood amid soaring dreams and gleaming glass, her future hanging in the balance, and she'd never felt so alone. The fateful offer sat before her, demanding a choice that would alter her life irrevocably. The biting wind atop the skyscraper still whipped around her, but what made Maya tremble now wasn't the cold. It was the deep wound Edward Thorne had just inflicted. She stood motionless, eyes wide with shock and pain, as if he'd struck her right in the heart of her pride and self-respect. Her chest tightened at his words. How could he dismiss the suffering Hunter, his own son, had caused her? A bitter lump rose in her throat and she forced a steady breath before locking eyes with Edward, fury burning in her voice. "Mr. Thorne, do you even realize what you're asking? I am not a tool nor a pawn for your son's rehabilitation. Do you honestly think money and power can buy everything, even someone else's dignity and self-worth?" Edward remained perfectly still, his face unreadable, but his sharp gaze never left her. It was as if he'd expected this reaction, and he let her unleash her outrage. Her voice quivered with anger as she pressed on. "I'd rather keep slaving away in that tiny diner, scraping by penny, than accept your degrading offer. I thought you were different from Hunter. Turns out you're just like him, believing you can control lives with cash." Her words echoed across the vast rooftop gallery, each one dripping with bitterness and disappointment. Edward stayed silent, though a genuine sorrow flickered in his eyes, an emotion Maya had never before seen in him. He stepped to the window, gazing out at the cityscape for a long moment before turning back, his tone softer, touched by regret. "I understand why you feel that way, Maya, but there's something you don't know. I'm not someone who accepts no without reason. You may hate me, despise me, but I cannot stand by and watch you turn down the one chance to save your beloved little brother." Maya froze, a jolt of electricity running down her spine. He closed the distance between them, meeting her eyes with unwavering seriousness. "Jaden, your brother, is battling advanced systemic lupus erythematosus. His current regimen, corticosteroids and basic immunosuppressants, only offers temporary relief and carries severe side effects. Your insurance has denied nearly every claim for the biologic immunotherapy he urgently needs at the Mayo Clinic, where its clinical success is well documented." He paused, letting the gravity of that truth settle in. Maya stood shaking, tears welling as his words cut through her like shards of ice. She shook her head, voice choked. How did you find all that out?" "I told you, I did my homework, on you and Jaden," he replied calmly, his gaze never wavering. "Without that advanced therapy soon, his condition will worsen rapidly, and his chances of recovery will plummet." He bowed his head slightly, his next words carrying rare warmth from a man known for his cold pride. "I know my proposal wounds you deeply, but please understand, this isn't only about me. Yes, I want Hunter to learn a lesson, but more than that, I want to help you and Jaden build the future you deserve. Think carefully, Maya. Don't let wounded pride make you pass up the chance to save your brother." Maya stood frozen, vision blurred by tears, caught in a fierce battle between wounded dignity and her fierce love for Jaden, the one she'd give anything to protect. Her heart felt split in two. She met Edward's gaze, voice trembling with a desperate plea. "Why are you forcing me into this? Why can't you simply help Jaden? With no strings attached. You have the power to do that." Edward said nothing, but his eyes hardened as he stared back. "Because I don't only want to help Jaden," he said, voice steady and resolute. "I want to save Hunter. And believe me, this is my last chance. I need someone strong enough to challenge him, someone who can change him. That someone is you, Maya. You're the only person who's ever made him truly look at himself." With that, Edward turned and walked toward the door, leaving Maya alone in the expansive rooftop space. Before he slipped out, he paused and added in a voice both stern and final, "I'll wait for your answer until tomorrow. Remember, your choice will shape not just your life, but Jaden's future as well. I trust you'll make the right decision." The door closed softly behind him, and Maya was left to face the hardest battle of her life, one in which every choice would leave its own lasting scar on her heart. The door closed softly behind Edward, the slight sound echoing like a bell heralding a life-or-death decision awaiting Maya. A profound hush instantly descended on the vast room, city lights outside now blurred through her tear-filled eyes. Maya felt all her strength drain away. Her shoulders trembled under the weight of this monumental choice. In that moment of despair, Jaden's face, his innocent smile and bright eyes, flashed vividly before her. That vision awakened a reservoir of inner strength Maya never knew she possessed. From deep within, a clear, powerful voice reminded her she was never one to bow to adversity. She drew in a deep breath, lifted her chin, and her gaze slowly steeled itself with the determination and confidence she was known for. She strode from the room and pursued Edward down the wide hallway, her voice strong and resolute as she called out, "Mr. Thorne, please wait." Edward turned, surprise flickering across his face at the sight of the young woman who'd moments ago seemed on the verge of collapse, now standing before him with unwavering resolve. "I've thought this through," Maya said, emphasizing each word. "I accept your offer, but I have conditions you must agree to if you truly want my help." Edward's sharp eyes softened with genuine surprise and curiosity, the first time he'd encountered someone bold enough to directly state her terms. His usual cold demeanor gave way to respect as he replied, "Very well, Maya. I'm listening." She inhaled deeply, squared her shoulders, and her eyes blazed with conviction. "First, I will never be involved in Hunter's personal life, nor will I play any psychological games orchestrated by you or him. I agree only to a purely professional role, and nothing beyond those boundaries." Edward nodded, his expression attentive, clearly impressed. Maya continued without pause. "Second, I require a direct line to you and to the project's chief architect. No one, Hunter or anyone else in your company, will have the authority to pressure me unfairly. I must be able to report any mistreatment straight to you, bypassing the usual chain of command." Edward briefly furrowed his brow, then relaxed into a look of understanding. He recognized her fierce resolve. But Maya's final condition was the decisive stroke. "Lastly, and this is non-negotiable, if Hunter ever subjects me to discrimination, insults, or violence again, our agreement ends immediately. However, you must continue your unconditional support for Jaden's medical care. I will not sacrifice my own safety or dignity, even for my brother's sake. That is my boundary, Mr. Thorne." Silence fell, broken only by their steady breathing. Edward stood for a long moment, genuine amazement and admiration crossing his features. In his career, he'd met many ambitious young people, but never one so fearless in asserting clear, uncompromising terms, especially from a position of such apparent disadvantage. Finally, Edward met Maya's gaze and offered a sincere, respectful smile. "Miss Lawson, I admit I underestimated you. Your courage and clarity exceed anything I imagined. I accept every condition you've set. No exceptions." He extended his hand, and this time their handshake was no longer about coercion or submission. It symbolized mutual respect and a fair agreement between two equals, despite the vast power gulf between them. As Edward walked away, Maya watched his commanding silhouette fade. She knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, that accepting a place in the Thorne power structure was her boldest move yet. But in her heart, Maya understood she'd claimed a remarkable victory, one that affirmed her self-respect and courage. From this moment on, Maya was no longer a victim of circumstance. She had transformed Edward's insult into an opportunity to reshape her and Jaden's destiny. And no matter how fierce the coming battles, she vowed never again to back down or surrender. The pale golden light of early morning streamed through the towering glass facade, bathing Thorne Global's massive headquarters in a soft, authoritative glow. Maya stood before the grand marble entrance, her eyes fixed on the company name embossed in gleaming letters. She drew in a deep breath, steadying the storm of emotions surging inside her. Today was her first day stepping into enemy territory, into the very heart of the Thorne family's power. The revolving glass doors whispered open as Maya entered the lobby, each click of her heels echoing against the polished marble floor. Curious glances followed her every step, but she refused to let them shake her resolve. Striding confidently to the elevator bank, she pressed the button for the executive floors. The indicator lit one level at a time, and with each ascending number, her pulse quickened. When the doors finally slid open, Maya emerged poised and unflinching, no longer the timid waitress she once was. Before her stretched a vast, state-of-the-art office suite bathed in natural light from soaring windows. Sharp-suited professionals bent over desks, absorbed in their work. And then she saw him. Hunter Thorne, standing behind a massive executive desk, his usual smug self-assurance etched across his face. At the sight of Maya, Hunter's confident expression froze. His cold blue eyes widened in disbelief. The black waitress he had once scorned and publicly humiliated now stood eye to eye with him in his own empire. That moment of stunned silence lasted only seconds, but it marked the true beginning of their war. Maya held his gaze, her eyes steely and unbowed, sending an unmistakable message. She was no longer the powerless girl he once knew. From this moment on, she would stand on her own 2 feet, and no one, not even Hunter, would ever underestimate her again. Hunter fought to regain his composure, but the anger and confusion lingering in his glare betrayed him. He took a slow step toward her, his arrogance battling to resurface. "Well, what a surprise, Maya Lawson," he drawled, sarcasm dripping from his tone. "I never would have guessed a little waitress could climb her way all the way up here. I'll admit, your sales pitch to my father was pretty impressive." Maya remained unmoved by his mockery, replying in a calm, unwavering voice, "Indeed, Hunter. I'm here because of my ability and my determination. From now on, I expect nothing less than a professional working relationship. I think you of all people understand what that means." Hunter's jaw clenched in fury at her directness. He closed the distance by another step, lowering his voice to a soft threat. "Don't think for a second that having my father's backing gives you license to act high and mighty here, Maya. I'll be watching your every move and listening to every word. And trust me, you make the tiniest mistake, you'll regret accepting this job." Maya met his threat head-on, her tone cold and resolute. "I have no intention of making any mistakes, Hunter, but I also won't stand by and let you bully me. If you have an issue working together, take it up with your father. He's the one who hired me, not you." Hunter froze, shock and rage warring in his eyes. Never before had he felt so powerless, especially against someone he had deemed inferior. With one last glare to etch her defiance into his memory, he turned and stalked away wordlessly. The tension in the office hung thick in the air. Witnessing their brief but explosive confrontation, the staff understood that a fierce power struggle had begun within Thorne Global's walls. Unfazed, Maya walked to her assigned workstation and sat down as if nothing had happened. Yet, deep inside, she knew this was only the first skirmish in a long campaign ahead. Hunter would not relent. and she would have to tread carefully with every step and decision. Lifting her gaze to the sprawling city beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, Maya inhaled deeply. She reminded herself that she had already overcome far tougher challenges. Whatever lay ahead, she vowed never again to surrender her self-respect or her values. The battle for Thorne Global had officially begun, and Maya was ready to enter the fray with all her strength and steadfast resolve. From the very first day Maya set foot in Thorne Global, this vast office became an invisible battleground, where silent clashes between her and Hunter grew ever more intense. No one spoke of it, but every employee could feel the tension like a low, pulsing current beneath the veneer of everyday politeness. Every glance, every word carried a hidden meaning, signaling that far more was going on beneath the surface calm. Hunter, by nature arrogant and used to absolute power, couldn't accept sharing workspace with a black woman, especially one he once saw as weak and easily dominated. Each morning when he strode in, his first glance was always aimed at Maya, not to greet her, but to size her up, searching for any tiny flaw to exploit. Maya sensed it clearly, yet never backed down an inch. He began his covert assaults with unreasonable demands, dumping on her impossible deadlines and withholding critical information, hoping she'd fail or slip up. But instead of panic or frustration, Maya remained unfailingly professional and composed under pressure. She tapped colleagues she trusted for missing details, then applied her sharp mind to solve each problem quickly and flawlessly, leaving Hunter with nothing to fault. Every time Maya flawlessly delivered on a project Hunter had deliberately sabotaged, his anger and confusion deepened. His cold blue eyes turned darker with malicious plotting. He dropped the polite facade and began lobbing cruel jibes, veiled barbs about her background, her skin, her origin, in front of other staff. But Maya never let those attacks shake her self-respect. She responded to every insult with intelligence and tact, always calm, courteous, and unflinching. Word of her courage spread among the employees. They saw that Maya wasn't merely defending herself. She was teaching Hunter a powerful lesson about respect and human dignity, values he had long scorned. Gradually, the office became an invisible arena for a dramatic mental chess match between Hunter and Maya. Each day, everyone waited to see how Maya would neutralize Hunter's latest scheme, and each time she rose to the challenge brilliantly. One day, Hunter summoned Maya to a private conference room, hoping to break her spirit away from witnesses. Inside the cramped space, he tossed a hefty binder onto the table with a smirk of challenge. "I want this detailed plan finished in 2 hours," he barked. "If not, I'm sure my father will be disappointed in your incompetence." Maya regarded the thick binder, a task clearly set up to be impossible. But instead of faltering, she smiled slightly, her eyes shining with resolve. "I'll do my best, Hunter," she replied evenly. "But you should understand that someone's abilities can't be measured by absurd assignments like this." Hunter paused, his confidence shaken by her unflappable calm. Without another word, he turned and left, muttering under his breath in frustration. 2 hours later, Maya emerged from the conference room and placed a flawlessly crafted, crystal-clear plan on Hunter's desk. He stood there, stunned and furious. He couldn't believe she'd met his impossible demand, especially after he'd piled every obstacle in her path. The staff watched quietly, some barely suppressing triumphant smiles at Hunter's humiliation. Maya said nothing as she returned to her desk, her expression perfectly calm, as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Over time, Hunter began to realize he was losing to Maya, not by brute power or status, but because her unbreakable spirit and self-respect were forces he'd never encountered. He was used to people shrinking or fawning before him, but for the first time, he faced someone he couldn't cow or outmaneuver. Their struggle only deepened and intensified, but Hunter grew more cautious, less reckless in his provocations. He had begun to recognize that Maya was no ordinary opponent. Maya, for her part, grew ever more confident and resolute with each step she took. Though their silent war raged on, she knew she'd already achieved something profound in the eyes of everyone around her. A black woman of intelligence and strength, who refused to bow to injustice or prejudice. On this unseen battlefield, Maya was winning day by day, with nothing but her courage and unshakable integrity. After many months of silent confrontation, the covert war between Maya and Hunter finally reached a limit neither could avoid. The expansive boardroom at Thorne Global was thick with tension, as if waiting for an eruption at any moment. Today's meeting was especially important. Every senior executive and key manager was present, including Edward Thorne, the company's formidable leader. Maya was presenting a daring, innovative architectural plan she'd poured countless hours into researching and perfecting. From the very start, she noticed Hunter seated across the table, his face darkening with irritation and resentment, his sharp, hostile gaze fixed on her, as though waiting for a single misstep. When Maya concluded, polite applause rippled around the room, and Edward gave a satisfied nod. Hunter's frustration only deepened. Unable to hold back, he slammed to his feet, the chair screeching against the cold wood floor and drawing everyone's full attention. "Enough!" Hunter barked, his voice laced with sarcasm and anger. "It's ridiculous that you'd let some black waitress like Maya stand here and lecture us on how to handle the company's major projects." An immediate hush fell over the room. Every eye turned to Hunter in shock and disbelief. For the first time, his simmering racial bias boiled over in full view. Maya's face went pale with both hurt and fury. She could not believe he'd dared spew such cruel, public insults. But Hunter pressed on, his tone vicious and cold. "What are we doing here? It's shameful that my father would let a black woman like her climb to this position. I refuse to sit here and listen to the nonsense from someone who clearly doesn't belong." Each of his words stabbed at Maya's pride, flooding her with humiliation and pain. She stood her ground with tears glistening in her eyes, tears she refused to shed, knowing this was the final line she'd warned Edward must never be crossed. The moment Hunter finished, Edward abruptly rose. His face turned ice cold, and for the first time everyone saw rage flash in his eyes. His deep, authoritative voice resonated through the room. "Hunter, you have crossed the line. This is the first and last time I'll allow you to insult anyone in this company, especially Maya. You have not only insulted a talented professional, but have shown intolerable immaturity, ignorance, and bigotry." Hunter froze, stunned by his father's public rebuke. His face burned with shame as his clenched fists betrayed his anger. But Edward gave him no room to respond. "I brought Maya into this company because her skill, courage, and intellect surpass anyone in this room, especially you. If you can't recognize that, then perhaps it's you who doesn't belong here, Hunter." Hunter stood wordless, looking at his father with wounded pride, unable to rebut. Edward then turned to Maya, his expression softening with genuine sympathy and respect. "Maya, on behalf of the entire company and myself, I sincerely apologize for those hurtful, cruel remarks. Please know this does not represent who we are, and I will ensure it never happens again." Maya met Edward's eyes, exhaustion and heartbreak giving way to tears that finally fell. His heartfelt apology eased some of her pain, yet deep inside she knew this battle had cost her dearly. She had reached her breaking point. When the meeting ended, Maya returned to her desk and sank into her chair, utterly spent. Ahead of her lay the toughest choice of her life: remain to fight for change in Hunter and the company's prejudices, or walk away to protect herself and her brother Jaden. Outside the window, the setting sun cast a faded gold over the skyline, a scene both beautiful and bittersweet. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her impending decision. She stood at the greatest crossroads of her life. Whatever path she chose would change her forever. She'd either be broken or stronger than ever. In her heart, the inner battle still raged. But Maya also realized that no matter what, she would never again allow her dignity or self-worth to be violated. This time, she would follow the voice of her own heart. A heart that had endured too many wounds, yet remained unbowed, determined never to surrender again. The morning sun seemed muted through Maya's eyes as she entered Thorne Global for the last time. She knew today would close the chapter on the stormy journey she'd chosen, yet somehow her heart felt lighter, as if the heaviest burdens had been lifted, making room for the pride and dignity she'd never truly lost. As she stepped into the familiar office, Maya paused. The atmosphere felt different now. Each colleague's glance carried silent respect and admiration. Just as she turned toward her desk to gather her things, a familiar figure appeared before her. Hunter stood there, fists clenched, wearing an expression of awkward shame no one had ever seen on him before. For the first time, he wasn't the arrogantly confident man she'd known. He looked lost, as if struggling with his own pride to say what came next. "Maya," he began, voice low and almost a whisper, his usual cold blue eyes now tinged with genuine regret. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Maya hesitated, then nodded. Hunter drew a deep breath, clearly gathering courage, and spoke with a sincerity she'd never heard from him. "I know this apology is probably too late. I know you may never forgive me for what I did, but I want you to know how deeply sorry I am. The racist things I said yesterday were the worst and most shameful things I've ever done. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away, but I need you to know I regret them more than anything." Maya looked at him, surprised and conflicted. She never imagined she'd hear these words from the man who had hurt her so deeply. But seeing the genuine remorse in his eyes, she knew his apology was real. Hunter continued, voice trembling slightly. "After my father reprimanded me in front of everyone yesterday, I realized how selfish and narrow-minded I've been. I grew up believing I was better than others. But you showed me that a person's worth isn't determined by skin color or background. You're the first person to make me see how wrong I was." Maya listened quietly, feeling a flicker of hope. Finally, she spoke softly. "I accept your apology, Hunter. I don't think we can ever be friends or colleagues, but I hope you truly change from today on. And I hope you never repeat that mistake with anyone else." Hunter nodded, genuine gratitude and remorse in his eyes. "I promise, Maya. I'll never forget this lesson. Thank you for showing me how wrong I was." As he turned and walked away, Maya watched his retreating figure, relief washing over her. But she didn't change her decision. To protect her dignity, she needed to leave. At the door, Edward waited, his eyes full of deep respect. He stepped forward, voice sincere. "Maya, I'm in awe of your strength and self-respect. I regret how things ended here, but rest assured I will keep my word. Jaden will receive the best possible care unconditionally, and I will continue to cover your tuition until you graduate. It's the least I can do to honor you." Maya smiled, feeling a peace she hadn't known in months. "Thank you, Mr. Thorne. I trust you'll keep your promise. I can't stay here. but I'll always carry with me what I've learned." Edward nodded proudly. "You should be proud of all you've accomplished, Maya. You've shown us the true meaning of strength. I hope one day Hunter learns to respect others as you do." Turning away, Maya walked out of the Thorne Global, feeling lighter and more serene than ever. Her journey there had ended, but the message of standing up to prejudice and racism would endure. Stepping into the warm sunlight, Maya felt its blessing on her face. She moved forward with pride and confidence, knowing she'd won her greatest battle. Not with wealth or power, but with her humanity and self-respect. For Maya, this was the real change of destiny she'd been seeking. Her story may end here, but her powerful message of courage and unwavering dignity against prejudice will resonate on. Maya Lawson proved that true worth lies not in skin color, background, or status, but in character, integrity, and the determination to fight injustice. What about you? If you were Maya, would you have the strength to defend your dignity no matter the cost? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and share this video to spread its meaningful message, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.